one of the most visited national parks on the East Coast. A magical journey to the highest point on the eastern seaboard of the US, and chasing one of the most famous delicacies of the area. This is a complete guide of the best places to visit in Acadia National Park, a trip to the famous town Bar Harbor, and a search of the best lobster rolls of the whole country. Join my adventure on Mount Desert Island. I have been riding all day, and after the big disappointment in northern Maine with all the dirt roads I was not allowed to enter on a motorcycle, I'm happy to be back on the coast now, and I will head over now to Mount Desert Island, which is super famous here on the coast. Mount Desert Island is the largest island off the coast of Maine and the second largest island on the eastern seaboard, behind Long Island. Having a year-round population of 10,615 inhabitants only, there easily visit 3.5 million tourists a year in addition, due to one of the island's main attractions, Acadia National Park. Wow, absolutely beautiful weather here at the coast now, and now I reached my destination for today, which is this town here, Bar Harbor, and it's supposed to be one of the best and probably as well one of the most popular places to stay here on the island. Bar Harbor is a lovely town right at the coast and the gateway to Acadia National Park. Yes, Bar Harbor might feel like a small seaside town, but plenty of restaurants, shops and hotels cater to all the tourists that flock the road during the main seasons from spring to October. Each year, Bar Harbor visitors consume, by the way, roughly 5,316,000 lobsters. These lobsters are caught directly off the rugged coast. Back in the days, lobster, by the way, was inexpensive and nutritional, so it was often served to servants and prisoners. Who would have guessed that this prison food would become a delicacy at one point? I'm leaving Bar Harbor today and I'm going to Acadia National Park here on this island, and I will drive a little bit around these islands, so it's something very special. The first step about visiting Acadia National Park is to get an entry ticket, and it's not like many other national parks where there is just a booth at the entrance that you basically can't miss because otherwise you can't enter. But depending on where you are coming from, you need to go to a visitor center to get that ticket, and that's what we're gonna do now. Hulls Cove is Acadia National Park's main visitor center. From the parking lot, you climb up 52 stone steps to the visitor center and already get some education about the activities of the park. In the center, you can purchase your entrance pass, speak with a ranger, or get some things in their shop before heading out to your Acadia adventure.
So this is the Hulls Cove Visitor Center behind me, and I just got the park entrance ticket that you need. I would recommend you guys to get it right away. So we are here, and what we're doing first is going here, and then we're going up Cadillac Mountain, which I think is one of the nicest parts of this ride.
Guys, I have some good and some bad news for you. The good news is that we are heading into the park now. And the bad news is that one of the main attractions of the park, that's called Cadillac Mountain, is not as easy accessible anymore as it was back in the days when I was here the first time on my world trip.
Hi!
Do you have a reservation?
Yes!
And do you have a park pass as well?
Yes!
Excellent. Very good. You're all set.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Can you buy park passes here too?
You can.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Only some of them, but yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
In the high season that lasts from mid-May to mid-October, in addition to your entry pass of the national park, there is as well a vehicle reservation required to access the Cadillac Summit Road. I can highly recommend to do the reservation at least a few days beforehand to make sure you get a spot to ride up the mountain, because it's definitely one of the highlights of Acadia that you don't want to miss out on. Wow, do you see this already here when riding up? How nice are these views? And I think we are on the top now, Cadillac Mountain. Here we are, actually my second time up here.
So this here is the top of the Cadillac Summit Road, and I guess you can see why it's so famous and why I think it's probably the prettiest point of this park, because of this. You have like, I think, nearly 360 degrees view on the surrounding.
Even though I had visited Cadillac Mountain already in 2017 on my world trip, the view definitely doesn't get old. Cadillac Mountain is the highest point on the eastern seaboard of the US and offers magnificent views of a glaciated coastal and island landscape. Indeed, people have enjoyed the spectacular views from Cadillac Mountain for thousands of years, as this area is the homeland of the Wabanaki people. European settlement on Mount Desert Island began in the 1600s. And soon after, because of being the highest point of the area, the summit was used for mapping the coastline. Now, after visiting the summit of Cadillac Mountain, we continue here on this loop ride through Acadia and we'll go to the next destination. If you want to explore as many different areas of Acadia as possible, the Scenic Park Loop Road, as one of 3 types of major road systems on the island, is your best bet. Constructed between 1921 and 1958, this 27-mile or 43-kilometer road is the go-to scenic drive around the east side of Mount Desert Island, connecting Acadia's lakes, mountains, and shoreline. It provides access to popular areas such as Sieur de Mont, Sand Beach, Otter Point, Jordan Pond, Cadillac Mountain, and the wild gardens of Acadia, that we were heading to next. Let's turn off here to the next destination, which in my opinion sounds like out of a fantasy novel. It's called The Wild Gardens of Acadia. The Wild Gardens of Acadia is maintained by a diverse group of community volunteers. It reflects the typical habitats that are found on Mount Desert Island. On the beautiful pathways, you can explore over 300 native species that are labeled, so even for a non-biologist like me, identification is easy. All of the next destinations that we will go to are kind of right on the ocean now. So from the more inside of Acadia National Park, we are now riding on the ocean road right at the coast. The first stop of my Acadia beach trip was Sand Beach, which is supposed to be one of the most beautiful beaches of the whole national park. But due to the water still being freezing cold, I quickly decided to continue instead of having a swim and to head to the next must-see of Acadia. The Thunder Hole is a small inlet carved into the rock by incoming waves. A cavern in the inlet causes an impressive thunder-like roar when the air is forced out by incoming waves. Unfortunately, the sea was quite calm when I drove by, so there was no big thunder, but it's worth to check out the rock formation anyways. Next stop is pretty much right next to the Thunder Hole, and it's called Otter Point, but I don't think we're gonna see any otters there. Otter Cliff is indeed not famous for being one of the most spectacular sights along the North Atlantic seaboard because of the animal, but because of the famous cliff being 110 foot or 33 meters high, one of the highest Atlantic coastal headlands north of Rio de Janeiro. At the same time, the Otter Cliff is one of the most famous and heavily used climbing areas in Acadia, and with a guide even suitable for beginners.
So we're done now with Acadia National Park, but we're going to the second part of the island now, mainly for a food reason, because there's a speciality here that you have to try when being in Maine in general, and as well here in the area, and I will take you to one of the best places to do so.
Guys, believe it or not, but we have seen now the most interesting destinations and go-to places of Acadia National Park, but we are not done with the Mount Desert Island yet, because so far we have only been on the eastern side, but I now want to go to the western side, which is also called the quiet side because it's much less touristic and much more secluded than the east. Indeed, my mission was not only to visit the western side of the island, but I was as well heading for the best lobster rolls of the American continent that are supposed to be served here. So now we're there soon. I'm actually so hungry, you can't even imagine it. I didn't eat all day because I wanted to come here as hungry as possible, because Maine is super famous for its lobster, and here in the area are supposed to be the best lobster rolls found in the US or maybe even in the world. You guys probably didn't realize throughout my recent videos, but I'm more or less vegetarian since a while, but doing exemptions whenever it comes to local food and specialities. But there are hundreds of shacks and restaurants serving lobster and lobster rolls in Maine, and I gave myself only this one shot, so I was hoping that this place was really serving some of the best lobster rolls in the world, as claimed by many of their customers. Thurston's Lobster Pond is serving their own fresh from the boat lobster, and when sitting at their place on a dock that is right over the bay at one of Mount Desert Island's busiest working harbors, you can even get a glimpse of all the equipment used for catching the lobsters, or on the huge tank that they are boiled in. Maine lobsters is, by the way, said to taste better and are more tender than lobsters found elsewhere because of both the water temperatures and rocky terrain that make them more delicate. I guess you folks are probably curious if the rumors are true and if I just had the best lobster roll I ever had at Thurston's. And I think I can confirm it was the best I ever had, but then I as well have to admit that I maybe had like 10 lobster rolls in my life. So I'm maybe not the best judge in this area. What I was able to judge, though, is that I really enjoyed my ride on Mount Desert Island. I maybe even enjoyed it more than on my first visit on my world trip in 2017. Yes, Acadia is the 6th most visited national park in the USA, and for sure one of the more busy ones. But there is a good reason for it, that I was lucky to be able to experience one more time. Guys, did you enjoy our visit to Acadia National Park? And did you enjoy to ride some roads in Maine that were actually allowed for motorcyclists? If yes, give this video a thumbs up and comment. Slowly, we are getting closer to the final destination of the epic East Coast ride. But next week, I first want to visit a very special person with you. Tune in next Thursday to find out more about the city Boston, my friend Charles, and to see me driving a very different vehicle than a motorcycle.